where we place meaning, where we place value, where we place worthiness. Those are all stories that we have either seen modeled for us by friends, family, parents, social media, or we have taken those beliefs on based on lived experience.
Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hi, friend, and welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for pressing play and spending some time with me to listen to something that is really going to make an impact on your life, especially this episode, this conversation. I just finished recording with Rachel, and really this conversation was a little bit longer, and that's because we had to touch on so many topics that most people don't talk about. When you hear conversations around your relationship with food or with your body or intuitive eating, there's a big focus on steps and strategies and do this and don't do that. But there's a lack of conversation around what are some of those invisible elements that will make or break your success in your healing journey. And Rachel, she is someone who's been on the podcast before. She was actually one of the very first guests that I had on the podcast. And you'll hear the story of how we got disconnected and then reconnected this year. And it's a really beautiful story. Her and I are now amazing friends. We talk regularly. We challenge each other. We support each other. And she is someone who has a history of yo-yo dieting, binge eating, being stuck in diet culture. And she's now a holistic nutritionist, a functional hormone health practitioner, an integrative nutrition health coach, and women's health expert. Wow, that is a mouthful. And we have a lot of conversations around those things that are unseen. Things like self-sabotage. Why do we do it, right? When we know that we have this goal or we want to do better or we want to change, but we don't follow through on it, or we procrastinate, or we freeze, or we distract ourselves. And that can be incredibly frustrating. And we are both just obsessed with understanding the mind and helping our clients to push through those blocks and to be able to create these really life-changing transformations in their lives. And so if you're someone who feels like you have a hard time when you set goals, or you have a hard time around the concept of failure, or even more appropriately, if you've ever had the thought of, once I lose weight, then I'll be happy, then I'll be confident, then I'll be worthy, then things will get better. What you may not realize is that this mindset is holding you back. It's holding you back from creating positive change in your life. It's holding you back from going faster in your healing journey. And it's holding you back from feeling better about yourself now, today. And this is something that I hear from the women in my community all the time, is how low their self-esteem and their confidence and their self-image is. And so you're going to really understand how to start experiencing elevated emotions, how to start feeling better about yourself, how to create positive feedback in your life, how to change the way that you approach goals so that your life runs smoother. It doesn't feel like you are pushing this boulder up a hill, like it's struggle and hard work, right? It doesn't have to be this way. And we know, Rachel and I know, because oh my goodness, have we had to learn the hard way. Multiple burnouts and tears and mental breakdowns that led us to learn these lessons that have radically improved our lives. And now I feel so much more secure and relaxed and calm and patient when I'm working on goals. I have this sense of confidence and of knowing that whatever I set my mind to, I will achieve. And it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And this is something that I talk about with my clients all the time because it's a really important concept that most people aren't even aware of. That the way that you approach your goals is actually going to make a massive impact on if you achieve those goals or not, and what that process is going to feel like, and if it's going to be sustainable and lifelong. So there is so much gold for you in this conversation. I would love for you to pause whenever you need and to write down like a little quote or a little note for you to remember, because yes, accumulating knowledge and listening to this is important, but you have to then take that and embody it and have experiences in your life where you are taking this knowledge and applying it and integrating it. And that's how it becomes wisdom. That's how it becomes part of who you are. So thank you for being here. Without further ado, I am so excited to welcome my business bestie, an incredible, incredible coach, Rachel Hepner. Rach, I'm so excited, and I'm like selfishly excited too, because not only do I get to record this on the podcast for our listeners, but also I get to talk to my friend about things that have been really important for me, especially in the past few years. And these are conversations that we've been having a lot this year. So I'm really excited to talk about really a superpower that you end up developing when you can stop being attached to goals, attached to something outside of you, your career, your relationships, your body, whatever that might be. So before we even start talking about what the heck it means to not be attached or to be attached, can you tell our listeners why this is so important? Because you've changed a lot this year. So why is this so important to learn?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited for this conversation. So if you guys don't know me well, I've been on Sabrina's podcast before. You can go find the previous episode where I tell you my whole story. We talk about the work I do as a nutritionist and a functional medicine practitioner. And a lot of podcasts I do talk about physical things, right? Tactical things that we do for our health and for our bodies. And the mental game, the spiritual, emotional mental game is just as, if not more important sometimes, right? The way that you think about yourself, the way you feel about what you're doing almost has more of an impact on you than what you're actually doing, because it may influence if you do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about the relationship, that the psychosomatic relationships, what I mean by that is the way your thoughts influence your body, the way your body influences your thoughts, that relationship has a critical biological response component to it. So this is why when you watch a scary movie, you get scared. You're not in danger, right? You are not experiencing the fear in the scary movie, but you have a visceral physiological response to it. That happens with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our belief system. And so I'm so excited to get into this because attachment plays a huge role in that. Where we place meaning, where we place value, where we place worthiness. Those are all stories that we have either seen modeled for us by friends, family, parents, social media, or we have taken those beliefs on based on lived experience.
Yeah.
So Sabrina and I are really close, like business besties outside. I mean, we do the work we do, but we also have like our little pod of business girlfriends. And we had this experience earlier this year where we realized like we were both going through like a dark night of the soul, which happens, right? In every aspect of your life.
Not
and we're
just
like,
one, multiple.
Not just one. Not just one, but we like connected. We're like, wait, you've been dealing with that? I've been dealing with that. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's going on. And so the element of community and making sure you realize that if what we talk about today resonates with you, you are not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. These are just conversations that I don't think happen publicly enough for you to realize that like everybody else is in the trenches with you in one way or another.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, that we're so focused on like, what do I do? Like, give me the strategies, give me the tips, and those definitely they have a place. Like, that's not what we're saying here, but I know that this happens like in every field, in every industry, in every area of your life when it comes to your relationship with food, or for you, your hormones and your relationship with your body. We don't see the mental piece, right? So we look at other people and we're like, okay, then what are they doing? Like, you try to copy the physical, and same for business. You're like, okay, what are they doing? How can I copy them? And I know that for the longest time, I underestimated how much the mental mattered, because the mental is not, it's not tangible, right? And you don't see it, you don't see how much it impacts your actions and your results, and in this case, your physiology. Like you said, like, we underestimate the impact of constant stress and pressure that we put on ourselves. And when we talk about your relationship with food, when you've been going through your entire life putting so much pressure on yourself to eat perfectly, or
Mhm.
to eat a certain way, or to lose weight, and your relationship with food is filled with guilt and anxiety and frustration and obsession, we don't think about the impact that this stress has on our body, has on our genes, has on the deterioration of what is going on internally. And then we get confused as to why we're always bloated, and we have digestion issues and sleep issues, and we blame it on the food instead of blaming it on how we feel about the food and how much pressure we're putting on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so much of that is learned behavior, right? So when you were a baby, you didn't have any stories around food, right? You knew that you needed food to survive. That is your basic programming instinct. Food is not good, food is not bad. There is no, moral score. There's no calorie count for
Mm-hmm.
babies. It's I need this to nourish my body and survive. And but between the ages of 0 and 7, you're essentially a walking subconscious mind. And so, what I mean by that is 5% of our brain is conscious brain. So, what you do every day counts for about 5% of brain activity. 95% of brain activity is subconscious, things that are happening automatically. This is where your beliefs, your stories, your patterns, your thoughts live. And then a little bit of them bubble up to the surface in the form of your actions. But when you're a child, your subconscious mind is completely open. You're a sponge. You're learning about the world. You're watching what people around you are doing. You're taking in information to decide, how do I feel about this? Do I like the ocean or not? Do I like dogs or not? How do I feel about food? How do I feel about myself? How do I feel about my parents, about relationships, about love, about school? You are forming your belief system in early childhood. And so when we either see things modeled for us, which could be a friend, a family member, sibling, parent, whoever that might be, or things are told to us, they automatically get put into that filing system as this is a belief.
Mm-hmm.
So, I grew up in a household where I saw my mom dieting a lot. I saw my mom restricting a lot. My mom has a lot of her own stories and body image issues that were projected onto my sister and I of, are you really going to eat that? Are you really going to wear that? That doesn't look good on you. Do you
Mm-hmm.
really need that dessert? All of these things that we're told as children when we have no understanding of what it means, they get immediately put in that filing cabinet of your life. And then what happens is we're too young to ask, do I like this belief? Does
Is
this
it
belief
true?
serve me? Is this belief true?
Mm-hmm.
Is this true for me? Is this true for all people? We're too young to ask those questions. So this filing cabinet fills up in your childhood, and then you take it with you into your adolescence, puberty, teenage years, adulthood. And it's really not until our brains are fully developed that we start asking those questions. I think we're seeing this revolution of women in their 20s and 30s of really taking their power back from food. I talk about taking power back from birth control on my platform with my community, taking our power back in the workspace and education, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to ask these questions. Is this true? Is this
Mm-hmm.
true for all people? Does this belief serve me? If the answer is no, what belief would I like to have instead? But just know a lot of things have been programmed from early childhood. when we didn't have that filter yet. We didn't have a sieve in our mind to know if something was true or not. Because if I told you, oh, the sky is purple, your brain says, well, I know that is not true.
Yeah.
Right? But if you had never seen the sky and I told you the sky is purple, you'd say, okay, sure, that sounds good. I don't really know what that means, but I'll put that away in the filing cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that in my own recovery from binge eating, it allowed me to give myself so much grace to realize a lot of the stories I had, a lot of the beliefs I had weren't actually mine.
Mm-hmm.
They had come from somewhere else, someone else, something else. And then I started asking, is this true? Is this true for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Does this belief serve me? If the answer is no, what belief would I like to have instead? And I think we can apply that to business, relationships, career, food, our relationship with our body. But I didn't understand how my brain worked for a really long time, or that a lot of these things are happening on autopilot in the subconscious. And all we see is a teeny tiny little piece of it that's coming to the surface in the form of our actions.
Yeah, that's so good, because the tricky thing, the sneaky thing about beliefs is that when you've repeated it so many times, you don't know that it's just a belief. It is literally a truth in your mind. Like, you think that this is the truth, that there's no other way of thinking. And I was having a conversation yesterday. I had a call with a woman who wanted to join Food Freedom Academy. And after talking, she is so deeply struggling. She's in a lot of pain. And when we talk about her future, she's telling me how scared she is of the future. And it's a very dark future that's waiting for her if she does not change her relationship with food and her body and dieting. And she's fully aware that if she doesn't change something now, that's where she's going. And that if she gets the support and if she does something about this now, then there's the possibility of a much brighter, much better future. And we're talking, and then she starts to get really, really scared. And when there's this opportunity of real change is when those beliefs start to bubble up to the surface. Those beliefs of, well, you failed everything that you do. You can never stick to anything. You're not going to follow through on this. Look at your past, look at your past, look at your past, right? Like, we focus on our past, and then all of these beliefs, they become so loud, and we believe them, right? We don't like create distance and ask ourselves, is this true or not? Like, is this something that is actually helping me? Is it creating positive results in my life? To us, it feels like the truth. And no matter what someone else might say or give you as a different perspective, you're like, no. Look at my past. I have all of this evidence to prove that this is true. But the problem is that, of course, you have all this evidence because that's the filter through which you've seen the world your entire life. You've seen the world through the filter of I'm a failure. And so, of course, you're only going to see your failures. If I were to ask you to list all of your successes, if I were to ask you to really sit down and list all of your successes, you might realize that there's a lot more that you've taken for granted or that you haven't brought awareness to because that wasn't your filter through which you saw the world. Those like glasses through which you saw the world was not I'm a success. So that's not the belief and the pieces of evidence that you've gathered throughout your life.
I love that so much because that resonates really deeply with me. You know a lot about like my diet history and how many fucking diets did I start saying, I'm going to stick with it this time. It's going to be different this time, right? I have more willpower, more discipline, whatever lies we are told by diet culture that keeps us stuck in that loop. And they're designed for you to fail because that feeling of, oh, I've let myself down. We put the blame on ourselves, right? We make it about we make it about me. I am the problem. And that's the fly trap that they want to catch you in. Because when you give your power away, when you say, well, it must be me, there's no way it could possibly be whatever the other thing was, whether it's the diet. There's been jobs I didn't get in my life that I was devastated about, whether it's a relationship that ends. We hold up this mirror and we just see everything bad. about us.
Mhm.
And the reason that happens is because our brain's default programming is negative, right? So if you think about if you were a primitive human living out in the woods, your brain is more worried about where are the threats than look at the beautiful landscape. Wow, look at these flowers, look at these butterflies. Your brain is programmed to see negative first and to exacerbate it. So 80% of our thoughts we have every day are negative. We only have 20% positive thoughts by default.
Mhm.
So, of course, your brain is looking for where's the danger? Where's the threat? What have I done wrong? What am I not doing? What should I be doing? More than looking at, wow, look at my wins for the day. Look at my wins for
Mhm.
the week, the month, the year, the last 5 years, 10 years of my life. That mirror is reflecting back to us all the negative, all the bad, all of the gaps versus looking at what have you done that's been amazing, right? What have you done that has gone incredibly well in your life? Where are you proud of yourself? Because we can't hold negative and positive thoughts at the same time. So when you make that conscious choice to hold a positive thought in gratitude for someone else, for yourself, for a situation, it's a huge shift. And sometimes we need to find examples of that. Like I said, I've had jobs in my life that I didn't get, and I was devastated in the moment. And I couldn't see any other outcome than like, this is it. This is the end of my life, end of my career. It's over. But then somewhere down the line, whether it was a year or a couple of years later, then I could look back and say, oh, there was a reason I didn't get that job. That job was not meant for me. That was not the right thing for me. And so if you overlay that onto dieting, what if the diets aren't working? Because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. What if they're not working for a reason because you're being guided away from them instead of trying to white knuckle your way through your 10th, 20th, 50th attempt? The universe is saying this isn't the right path. Let's go do something different.
I have the biggest smile on my face right now because we were having this exact conversation yesterday with this woman because she kept bringing me to her past and she kept talking about her past. And I stopped her and I was like, right now, you are living in your past. And if we look at the timeline of your past, your present, and your future, right now in the present, you're making all of your decisions based off of your past. And so if you're making all of your decisions based off of your past for your future, do you think that your future is going to be different or it's going to be just more of your past? And she goes, well, it will be more of my past, but it's important to look at your past because that's how you learn your lessons. And I stopped and I just told her, I was like, that's interesting because you're not learning your lessons because you have done the diets over and over and over and over again. But every time you blame yourself. Every time you're just repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And one of the biggest problems that happens, especially in the diet industry, is I'm all about compassion. You know, I'm all about compassion, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about giving yourself grace and kindness. But I think that a big problem that's happening now is that whenever like something that we don't like that doesn't feel good happens, like a binge or overeating or like a day that just wasn't a great day, we kind of just bury it and we say, tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's going to be better. But those quote unquote failures, those blocks, those challenges, those hard days, those things that don't go your way, those are the opportunities for you to learn what's not working. And every time that you kind of sweep it under the rug and you're like, you know what? Let's just restart tomorrow. Well, now you're just restarting without taking the lessons that you needed to say, oh, well, okay, I'm noticing that, well, I binged at night, but I also skipped breakfast. Oh, okay. I'm making the connections. I'm connecting the dots. When I skip breakfast, I'm hungrier at night. Or I didn't eat all afternoon. So that is how you learn about yourself. That is how you actually can use your past to move yourself forward and to create a better future. But I think that this is a piece of the conversation that is really missing when it comes to actually getting lessons from your past instead of just repeating your past.
Yeah, and it requires you to be a little uncomfy, right? It requires you to sit in those feelings and address them, talk to them, figure out what is this telling me? What am I learning from this? And that is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain is programmed to move you away from pain and away from discomfort, which means that we just want to bury it. We don't want to think about it. We might be coping with it in an unhealthy way. Right? My coping mechanism was food, right? Food made me anxious, guilty, shameful. And in order to move away from those feelings, I used food to cope with them, right? It's
Yep.
that vicious cycle that we get stuck in. With food, again, is just one example. This could be addiction to stress. This could be addiction to your phone, social media, distraction. This can appear as avoidance. Like this can appear in a lot of different ways, but it requires you to be okay being uncomfortable and sitting with those feelings. So, I have a really wonderful therapist who taught me a tool on what if you gave those thoughts or feelings a physical form? What would it look like, right? So if you're saying, oh, I binged tonight, I felt really ashamed of myself. I feel really guilty. What if you sat and closed your eyes and you gave a physical form to that? What would it look like? Would it be a shape, a color, a person, maybe a different version of yourself, maybe a different person altogether, maybe an object? What if you could give a physical form to it and then talk to it and say, what are you trying to tell me?
Mm.
How are you trying to get my attention right now? What do I need to learn? What do I need to hear or be present to? And then receive it. Allow that to come through. And like I said, this is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
This can be very uncomfortable to do, especially in the beginning, because nobody taught you to do this as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't learn it in childhood when your subconscious was 100% open to receiving, now there's a little bit of a wall up that we have to push through. And it's thin, right? This is a paper thin wall. It's an illusion in our mind that you have the power to get to the other side of. But what if you took that minute to pause to say, what's your purpose? Maybe, how are you trying to protect me? How do you
Yep.
think you're showing up for me? I did this exercise on a group coaching call with some of my clients, and my client was procrastinating going to bed. She's like, Rachel, no matter what I do, I end up staying up way too late. I don't get enough sleep. I wake up exhausted, and it's like a vicious cycle because then I'm crabby. I'm snapping at my kids. I'm irritable at work. I want to reach for all the sugar and the candy and the treats because my body needs energy. And I said, okay, let's talk to that part of yourself that's procrastinating sleep. What is her purpose? And she sat there and she thought about it for a couple of minutes and said, I don't feel like I'm getting enough time for myself.
Mm.
And this part of me is trying to give me time for myself at night after the kids have gone to bed, after I've hung out with my husband, and I feel like, okay, now I have time for me. And if I go to sleep early, I'm going to give that time up and I'm going to feel like I lost something. I said, okay, beautiful. Beautiful. It's trying to help you. It's trying to support you and love on you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
What agreement could you come to fulfill that purpose in a different way that doesn't sacrifice your sleep? And so for her, it looked like, well, if I got to bed earlier, then I'd be able to actually wake up when my alarm went off to have my morning time instead of snoozing my alarm 5 times and then missing out on my morning time to pray, have my coffee, maybe journal, meditate, go outside, because her mornings were chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, so can you and this part of you agree to this new plan? Could you just try it? Right? We're not signing a blood oath. We're not making a life contract to this change. Can we just agree to try it without pressure, without expectation? She said, okay, that sounds a lot better. So I saw her a couple weeks later and she's like, Rachel, I can't even tell you how much that changed my perspective. It was all this was a perspective shift on a thought that she was having, a part of her that was trying to do something positive, but it was coming out. The action was a negative consequence for her life.
Yeah.
And so you can look at that and think about, okay, what is the thought or the feeling? What is its purpose? What can I learn from it? And if I don't like its purpose, if I don't like what it's trying to do, what could we agree to try and do differently? And so this is work that nobody taught me. Nobody teaches us as kids, that is super, super profound, but it requires you to be uncomfortable and your brain doesn't want you to be in that space. So it's recognizing, thank you for trying to keep me safe from discomfort. I'm going to step into it anyways.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I was having a very similar conversation with my clients last night and last week as well. And I think that what tends to happen when you're kind of on your own, doing this work on your own, and you don't have someone else to reflect it back to you to kind of gently push you as well, is that we don't like to do that mental effort, right? And we don't like to dig, and we don't like to have to think more than we have to. And so the easiest answer is, I don't know. I don't know what it's trying to do. It's just me. There's just something wrong with me, because chances are your client every morning was like, today is going to be different. Yeah. Today I'm going to go to bed early. And then her conscious mind was super on board with the plan. But her subconscious mind was like, we have other plans here because you have some needs that are not being met right now. And I had a similar conversation with one of my clients who every time that her husband was out of town, she would go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of food that she normally wouldn't buy and honestly didn't even really want, but would bring them home and then binge. And couldn't understand. Like, she knew it didn't feel good. She knew that it wasn't serving her. And when I asked her, like, let's slow down here, what need is not being met right now? Because it feels like it's out of your control. And if you feel like your conscious mind understands and quote unquote knows better, there's a need that's not being met. And just like your clients, like, I'm not getting enough time by myself, or I'm not getting enough love or comfort, or I'm not just filling my cup enough. So this is what I've learned as a way to fill my cup. I want to talk about kind of something that we both experience in, the realm of this conversation. So if we go back to talking about our past, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And so I learned at a young age that, and all overachievers, I learned at a young age that in order to be worthy, in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, in order to be part of something, I needed to overachieve. I needed to accomplish. I needed to have the good grades and be good in sports. And that served me when I was younger, right? And that is all I knew. Did anyone sit me down and say, Sabrina, here's how you're going to live your life. You need to achieve. You need to have the results and the outcomes in order to feel worthy and feel good about yourself? Of course not. And chances are that also wasn't the case, but humans are meaning-making machines. And so that is the meaning that I created. And so, of course, that got reflected in my dieting and my relationship with food and my body. I need to be the best at working out. I need to be the best at dieting. I needed to be the best at losing weight. And when I got comments and compliments, and especially coming from my parents, when sometimes I look back on it and I can see it as like, no, those comments weren't compliments. They were concerns, but I took them as compliments. And the thing that we want the most is love from our parents, right? They are in charge of our survival when we're growing up. And so we will do anything in order to be taken care of, in order to be part of that in group. So I really brought this into my business. And you know this. Everything that I was doing was in order to feel like I was successful. And so I would set these goals, these big, ambitious goals, and I would go after them. And when I didn't hit those goals, it wasn't just like, oh, didn't hit the goal. It was like my world was crumbling down. And the amount to which my sense of worthiness and success and accomplishment as a human being was attached to the success of my business quite literally made me sick. Because when your worth is on the line, well, now I will do anything to feel worthy. So if I have to work nights, I'll do it. If I have to work weekends, I'll do it. If I have to sacrifice my social life, if I have to burn out over 5 times, I'll do it because I'm so attached to finally feeling good and feeling like I'm a success. And it wasn't until this year, the beginning of this year, that I had my worst burnout yet. And I remember Luke coming into my office. It was a Thursday, and he walked in and I just broke down in like hyperventilating tears. And he was so concerned and like didn't understand. He was like, "What's going on, babe? Like what is happening?" And to communicate that it was just that I hadn't hit a goal once again, it was really hard to explain to someone who's, Luke has a healthy relationship with goal setting and a healthy relationship with results. It's hard to communicate that. And then we got connected and we started talking about it, and we realized how similar we are. And so I want to talk about this attachment that we have to goals, because this is a conversation I have with my clients from our very first orientation call, the importance of being detached from the process of healing your relationship with food, of becoming an intuitive eater, of improving your body image. It is one of the most important things that will actually make this process go faster. So in your world, in your terms, and based off of your experience, what does the concept of detachment from goals mean to you? And how did what was your process to get to where you are today? Because I know that you had quite a journey, just as I did, to learn this lesson the very hard way.
I'm laughing because Sabrina and I got connected a couple years ago through social media, and we did podcasting together, but like we didn't form like it's hard to form like a really deep friendship over social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of the beast. So we're at a business conference in April this year, and like I don't know she's going to be there. She doesn't know I'm going to be there, and we're at breakfast. And we just happen to like end up in line for the breakfast buffet next to each other. And I'm like, why does she look so familiar? And she's like, wait, I know you, Rachel, right? And I'm like, Sabrina, am I getting your name right? And she's like, yes. I'm like, oh my God, what are the fucking odds that I live in Arizona. Sabrina lives in Montreal, and we are standing next to each other at this breakfast buffet at this business conference that we did not know either of us were going to be at. Like, divine intervention here. And then we sit down and we start talking, and we realize like we are both dealing with very similar things in our business. And we have a lot of shared history through our dieting, binge eating, difficulty with our relationship with food. And I'm like, oh my God, like there are so many times in your life where the same themes are going to show up in work, relationships, business, your health, food, whatever it is. It's a bizarre phenomenon that like I don't even fully understand. Maybe there's some quantum physics in there, right?
Yeah.
That we're like, wait, here we are again, given the opportunity to face something that is causing us a lot of heartache, right? I've dealt with severe burnout. I've dealt with so many beliefs around worthiness, goal setting in my business. What does it say about me? What does it say about my life? Whatever it is. And I think one of the most important things I've learned this year is that we create pressure on ourselves using the leverage of timing. And so what I mean by that is we're at this business conference and we're asked the question, if I asked you to make $1 million this year, what is your belief in that? What is your belief that you could make $1 million this year? And I'm like, fuck, zero. My belief in that is zero. I'm like, wait, how many months are left in the year? There's no way. And there are some people in the room that might already be making multiple 6 figures, 7 figures. Their belief's really high. My belief is super low. And then he said, what if I asked you, could you make $1 million in the rest of your life? Between now and the last day of your life, could you make $1 million? And I'm like, well, shit, of course I can. You know how much time that is? You know how much time I'd have to achieve that goal? And that was super, super profound for me because I realized SMART goals, right? We all learned fucking SMART goals in school, which are just awful in a lot of ways because one of the elements is time. What's your time bound? What's your deadline? It's made up. You are making up that timeline for yourself. And I realized so many of the goals I was setting was if I don't achieve this by X date, I have failed. It wasn't, I'm going to go after this until I achieve it, no matter how long it takes. It's if I don't do this by January 1st, I'm a failure, right? If I haven't lost the weight by the end of the year, if I haven't gotten this job, if I haven't made this amount of money, if I haven't met my life partner, I'm a failure. It means I have failed. And so if we take that cap, if we take the timeline, if we take the deadline off of it, we remove pressure because pressure creates anxiety. Pressure creates a stress response because that means there could be impending doom, right? And your reptilian brain, your amygdala, number one goal is to keep you alive. And so pressure, scarcity, fear create a response in your body physiologically of, I am in danger, my life is in danger. And so that was something really profound for me this year. I was like, oh my God, do I care enough about this goal to go after it regardless of how long it takes? Mm-hmm. And I think that is the question we really need to be asking ourselves is this in alignment with who I want to be and what I want my life to look at? And if the answer is yes, am I committed to it, regardless of if it takes a month, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that might be. But we throw in the towel because of an arbitrary deadline that we set for ourselves. I'm like, wait, like you guys, this broke my brain.
Yeah.
Because I told Sabrina I had like my own, mentee bee earlier this year of like, I didn't meet these goals. This is never going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, is this true? Is this true for all people? And of course, the answer is no. Mm-hmm. So I think timing is something that has like really become apparent to me that whether it was in school, deadline for a test, right? Whether it's, graduation from high school, graduation from college, the end of the year, there are so many timelines, so many deadlines in our life that are modeled for us. And then we take on that behavior and we start doing it in a way that becomes self-destructive.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up the concept of time because it's really true that when I look at this year after my very last burnout, I stopped and I asked myself, like, what are you doing all of this for? And really the goal is to help as many people as possible. But what I noticed is that no, now this was about proving myself to myself or to other people or proving that I'm good enough. And when I started entertaining the idea, because what I was really doing is I was trying to go as fast as possible. Like, you got to hit your goals. Like you said, I had all these goals by the end of the year, by 2023, whatever it might be. And this was creating so much stress and anxiety because the way that I explain it to my clients is like, imagine that I go to sit down on my computer to do some work and I'm trying to be creative. I'm trying to tap into my intuition and do like my highest, most creative work. And there's someone whispering over my shoulder, like, you're not going fast enough. This sucks. You're never going to be able to do this. You're so slow. You're not doing enough. Do you think that you are more or less likely to get work done when you're so stressed? And I've worked from that place where I'm working and I'm like, oh my God, I'm taking longer than I said that I would. And I have all these things to do and you're not going fast enough. And when you're coming from that place of I'm not going fast enough, then that just, it affects the way that you feel about yourself. Yeah. Now you're never going fast enough. Now you're never doing enough. And at the same time, what happens is you try to do too much. Then you're like, okay, well, if I have this time limit, and I was talking to one of my clients, she sees it as I have so much quote unquote work to do. I'm sure your clients have said that too. Like, oh man, I have so much work to do. And we look at all the things that we want to change about ourselves and all the things that we want to improve on. And we're like, okay, well, if I have to improve my sleep schedule and I have to improve my eating habits and I have to start moving my body and cleaning my house, because you're attached to this goal now And your sense of being able to say, I feel good about myself is attached to this goal. So you want to start feeling good about yourself as soon as possible, right? You can't possibly feel good about yourself until you've done all those things. So you try to do all of them. And when you try to do all of them, you do none of them because A, it gets too overwhelming or it's not sustainable. Because of course, if you try to change your entire lifestyle overnight, it's going to fall apart at one point. And so to allow yourself to slow things down and say, I'm going to start working on one thing at a time. Yeah. And in the process, I'm going to allow myself to feel good about myself now. My worth, the meaning that I've created around this goal, what I think it's going to make me feel like I'm only going to feel confident or happy or successful. Those things are available to you now. And actually, if you don't work on feeling those things now before you achieve those goals, you'll never feel them because how you feel is always going to be dependent on something outside of you. It's always going to be this finish line that you keep pushing and pushing. And I know because I've done that before.
Yeah. I think we've all done it, right? We have this idea of, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get the job, when I get in the relationship, when I lose the weight, when I look a certain way, when I've made a certain amount of money. We all have that. That is just a part of the human experience, the human condition. But you probably have an experience in your life where you got the thing and you didn't feel any different. You felt the same. And so it's actually a psychological phenomenon that happens where we can actually feel an emotion more strongly when we think about it happening in the future than we can feel it right now. And we feel negative emotions more strongly than positive. Right? There was an incredible study done. This was a medical research experiment where neuroscientists were putting little probes in people's brains. And they said, this gives us the ability to control emotions. What emotions would you like to keep? What emotions would you like to get rid of if we could? Every single participant in the study wanted to keep the emotion of anger because we feel the emotion of anger very strongly. It sends really strong signals. It's like the volume on your radio's up really loudly. Mm-hmm. But the volume on other emotions is a lot quieter. They're more fleeting, right? We'll probably give some recommendations at the end, but there's a quote from a book that I love that says, the Constitution is written, the pursuit of life, liberty, happiness, the pursuit of happiness, right? Not happiness itself. It is the pursuit of it because your ideological creation of how you're going to feel when you've lost the weight is actually a stronger emotion than what you would feel when you got there in real life. Mm-hmm. It's an unbelievable phenomenon. And so if you can recognize that and say, okay, this is a psychological trick that I'm playing on myself, right? These are the games that our brain plays to recognize, how could I channel that emotion right now? How do I think I'm going to feel when the jeans fit? I'm going to feel confident. I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel secure in myself. Okay, what would it look like to feel those right now? Because time is irrelevant to your brain. Mm-hmm. This is why you can think of something sad that happened in your life 10 years ago, and it'll make you sad right now. If you can think about, okay, I'm visualizing me in my favorite jeans. And I'm feeling great. I love my body. I'm confident. I feel sexy. I feel secure in myself. How could I channel that today in the body I have right now? Mm-hmm. Because that carrot that we keep moving further and further and further away, the joke is that we never get there, right? It's that hedonic treadmill that we're on, that it doesn't go anywhere. We're just in the same place. And so I think you can insert whatever that might be. And it's very different if you are a business owner. Being a business owner is a very weird kind of mind fuck where all of these stories come up and present themselves to you. It's like therapy on steroids is being a business owner. And so I think we've all experienced that in some way. And it's a lie that we're telling ourselves, right? If I just have the thing, if I just have the person, if I just have the outcome, then I'm going to allow myself to feel a certain way. And it's really disappointing, right? Like, what if you get there, right? Like, I lost the weight. I lost the weight through the crazy dieting, through the exercise. And then I got there and I felt terrible. I was super weak. I was having, cystic acne, migraines. My hair was falling out. My anxiety was through the roof. I couldn't hold it. I like got myself to this, quote unquote finish line. Okay, I just need to get here. And then I immediately moved away from it. I put all the weight back on.
Yeah.
Because it really had nothing to do with that, right? That was just the story I was telling myself. And so I think that there is so much power in realizing, wow, I get to choose how I feel today, right now, and recognizing that you cannot heal, you cannot grow, you cannot develop from a place of hatred, right? If you hate where you are right now, whether it's I hate my life circumstances, I hate my body, I hate myself, I hate my job, I hate my friends, I hate my partner, that is not a force of good for your life versus healing from a place of love, right? If you're in a relationship that you don't like, how could you love yourself enough to change something? Whether it's talking to your partner, going to therapy, maybe ending the relationship. If you hate a job, how could you love yourself enough to talk to your work, look for a different job, find a new position? If you hate yourself, you're never going to get to a place of love. But if you say, I'm going to heal because I love myself so much that I'm going to do this work no matter how long it takes, that's like the key that unlocked everything for me in my healing journey. And I'm now harnessing that key again in my business journey. How could I love myself enough to be kind and graceful to myself as a business owner? And not set these unrealistic goals or expectations, not put all this pressure on myself with time, not compare myself to everyone and everybody else. I think that is such a gift that you can give yourself that nobody can give it to you, right? It is a gift from you to you.
Yeah. And what I always tell my clients is that, we get so attached to that external thing. Like, okay, once I lose the weight, then I'll feel a certain way. I will feel different. Once I hit the goal, once I get the outcome, like then I'll feel different once I have the house. And the thing is that when you look at your actual brain and you look at like all the little neural pathways that you've created throughout your life, if you've never seen a picture of what your brain looks like, it literally looks like these little highways that just connect one neuron to another. And those highways, they are these neural connections that you've made. And so let's say there's a connection that you've made and that you repeat, that you drive on every day. And that pathway is, my body is not enough. There's something wrong with my body, right? That's the connection that you are driving on every day, is there's something wrong with my body. There's something wrong with my body. Well, you literally haven't established the neural pathway, the connection, the little highway in your brain that says my body is enough. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Not only is it not there, but you're obviously not driving on it because it's not even established. And so now you're going on this journey of, okay, once I lose weight, then I'm going to feel better. You're also driving that little highway. So you are strengthening, you're hardwiring those connections in your brain. And so it doesn't happen overnight that now you step on the scale. You can't just create this new super highway and create this new connection of, oh, now my body is enough overnight. It is a process that happens through repetition and consistency. And if you haven't done the work to learn how to change your mind, how to set up those new neural pathways to say, my body is enough, I can be confident, I'm loved, I am worthy, then it doesn't matter what happens externally. If you don't change your mind, none of that is going to change how you feel about yourself.
Totally. And I think it's important to know that our capitalist system is set up to take your power from you, because that is how we sell you things, right? Like look at diet pills, look at medication, look at weight loss programs, whatever it might be. They're saying this is what you're missing, right? You don't have enough. I have what is missing from you. And part of the reason why Sabrina and I are such good friends and we get along so well is because that is not how we approach our work at all. Our clients are perfectly whole. You're perfectly whole just as you are. You might need resources or tools or support to get where you want to go, but there's nothing missing in you. We don't have some secret sauce that we're going to pour on your food that's like a magical cure.
Yeah.
But if you understand psychology, it can be weaponized against consumers. And I think being
Absolutely.
able to help people recognize that system, to say, hey, there are foods that are made to be addictive. It's not your fault. There are language patterns used to make you feel bad about yourself, so you will buy something. If you can recognize that, it allows you to then take a step back from it. And if you've ever had this experience before where you get the ick, and what I mean by that is, like, let's say you went to a restaurant and you got food poisoning, okay? And you got the ick about that restaurant. Your brain immediately cut a neural cord and was like,
Mhm.
fuck that. We are never eating there again, right? That is an example of this happening in an instant, usually because it is coupled with some type of like traumatic experience or a really
Yeah.
strong emotion.
Massive emotional response. Yeah.
Massive emotional response can cut a neural cord real quick.
Hmm.
But that's not what happens for most of us most of the time, right? So, to your exact point, Sabrina, if you're walking the same path every day, it's having the conscious thought of, okay, I'm not going to walk this path today. I'm going to take a right instead of a left,
Hmm.
right? And the first time you walk that new path, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It might be a little more difficult, right? Imagine walking through the rainforest where there's no path carved in front of you. The first time is really, really challenging, but then you walk it again and it's a little easier. You walk it again, it's a little easier. And every repetition ingrains the neural pathway more and more and more until your body cuts the cord with the other pathway magically. Right. I,
Yeah.
I used to be a chronic soda drinker. I used to drink soda like it was going out of style.
That's shocking.
Shocking. I'm right. If you knew me now, like I grew up in a household where like the fridge was full, stocked with 2-liter bottles of everything you could imagine. And
Your
I would say,
kombucha right now is like, what?
right? It's like, are you cheating on me? What's going on? And, but I had a belief that I'm like, I saw people that didn't drink soda. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I couldn't drink soda. There's no way I could do that. That's what I was telling myself. That was my story. But then I started to slowly do things differently. Okay, I'm not going to have soda every day. Okay, now I'm, going to have soda once a week. Okay, now I'm not going to have soda at home. I'll have it if I go out. Now I'm not really going out to eat as much, so I'm not having as much exposure. And then it happened. I went out and I ordered a soda and it tasted awful.
Mm,
And I was like, it's done. It's complete. And you guys, I'm talking like this was like a battle over like maybe 2 years' time.
hmm.
I'm not drinking soda ever again starting today, right? It was moving myself in a new direction slowly over time. And
Hmm.
again, this is the time, this comes back to timing. What deadline are you putting on yourself? If I don't stop drinking soda by the end of this year, I'm a failure. I'm never going to be able to do it. But in recognizing your brain will do this work for you subconsciously if you hold the intention of how do I want to feel today? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? How does that feel in my body? And before we wrap up, I'd like to talk a little bit, Sabrina, about the ways that self-sabotage can maybe show up a little bit. Because I have a
Mm.
few that come to mind to me, and I'd love to know, like, what are the different ways that you maybe recognize it in yourself or you've seen it with your clients? Because those are the things that get in our way of getting where we want to go or becoming who we want to become.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you brought this up because the first thing that comes to mind is around the notion of fear and safety. So for the longest time, I'm a chronic goal setter. I love setting goals. I love achieving. I love going after things. I love growing. Of course, now the way that I approach things are very different, but I still love setting goals. And I would journal on them and I would write about them and I would share it with people. And it was only recently that I started tapping into how do I feel when I write down this goal? Like when I'm writing it down, what's going on in my body? Am I like excited? Am I fully on board? Am I like 100% in it? And it was only recently that I started realizing, oh, Sabrina, you write down these goals, but there is so much resistance in your body. Like you are terrified. You're writing these goals consciously, but subconsciously, there is so much resistance. And I wasn't addressing it. I was just under the impression that if you just write down your goals, if you're just committed and if you think about them every day, then you will achieve them. Isn't that how it works? The truth is that that's not how it works because what I started doing when I was writing down my goals is I started putting my hand on my heart. And when I noticed that resistance, some kind of block, something that was not 100%, like it needed to be 100% hell yes. And I know that now because I know the way that I feel when I think about Luke and I want to rescue a dog next year. And if it was up to me, it would be tomorrow. But I respect his timeline. So when I think about us having a dog, it is nothing but pure excitement, anticipation. Like I said, it could be any day now and I would be absolutely just over the moon. And that is one of those goals that I'm manifesting that I have 0% doubt that we will find the most perfect dog for our lifestyle. And when I compare it to how I feel when I set certain business goals, the energy is different. There's fear and there's resistance. So I started putting my hand on my heart and asking myself, what are you afraid of? Asking that part of me, right? Because we work in parts. And so there's a part of me that obviously wants to achieve the goal, but there's also a part of me that is so terrified. And so I started asking myself, what are you afraid of? And what I started noticing is that that part of me had created these like worst case scenarios around what it would mean to actually achieve that goal. Mm-hmm. And that I wasn't scared of failing. I was scared of succeeding because I had these stories, and most of the time the stories are so illogical. They are irrational. They are not based in facts, but it is like these fears that we create because we want to stay in our comfort zone because achieving that goal means you're doing something you've never done. So it's uncertain, it's unfamiliar, which means that to your brain and to your ego, it is dangerous. So what I would notice is this is how self-sabotage showed up for me, is that I would say that I would have all these goals, but subconsciously I was scared of them. So I would do things, I would spend so much more time procrastinating, spending my time on things that don't matter, making myself feel busy, like reading a lot of personal development and reading the books and feeling like I was busy, doing the busy work because I was avoiding doing the things that were scary that would actually make me move forward and achieve the goals I was setting. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's a great example of, and I think that's honestly like a twofold answer. Yes, I think it is part of subconscious self-sabotage that your brain's like, we don't actually want this. We're afraid of this. This might be dangerous. What would it mean if we actually achieved this? But I also think it goes back to, we can't cut the cord on everything, right? Like the idea of like, I'm not attached to anything in my life is probably impossible. Maybe like a Buddhist monk.
A Buddhist monk might be.
The normal person, probably not going to happen. We can recognize that.
Yeah.
But it's saying, am I placing my attachment on the right things? Right? Your brain doesn't like a vacuum. It doesn't like a void. It has to fill it with something. And so it's saying, okay, if I'm not going to be attached to outcome A, what am I going to be attached to within myself instead? Right? It's like you unplug a cord, you got to plug it in somewhere else. Right? So when you think about your goals, are you plugging your cord into the right thing? Right? If you're saying, oh, I want to lose the weight, I want to lose the weight. What are you saying you actually want? Right? What's under that? If we kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, does it come down to, I want to feel loved. I want to feel worthy. I want to love my body. I want to feel confident. Okay. How can we get down to that and then plug your cord into that thing? Right.
Yes.
Because the universe is guiding us every day. And whether it's source, universe, God, whatever your belief system is, your job is the what, right? I want to look for more evidence of how worthy I am. And then the universe is going to show you the how. Here's how you do this. And here's when it's going to happen. And so to your point with Luke and his timeline for the dog, right? It's like, I want to do this tomorrow. Let's go. And it's like, okay, but even if it doesn't happen tomorrow, you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And you're also recognizing, I want another cat. I'm a crazy cat person, if you didn't know that about me. And I keep having visions of like, it was in a dream, it was in a meditation of, I love fluffy cats and I want a long-haired, fluffy black cat. That's what I'm seeing.
Super
And so
specific.
very specific. I'm calling that into my universe, but I don't know how and I don't know when, and I'm not really concerned about it. I'm just like, look, that's what the vision I'm having, and it might look different, right? Like it might not even be that cat when it manifests,
Yeah.
but it's just having the intention. And so I think self-sabotage can come subconsciously if your goals feel like they're unaligned, right?
Mhm.
If your goals feel dangerous to your body or your mind, it's going to show up in different ways. And so you called out procrastination. Avoidance is another great one. Distraction is another one. Something that I've recognized recently about myself is being vague. Vague to
Oh,
me is
yes.
self-sabotage of I'm gonna I'll stay on a health example so it feels relevant to the listeners. I'm gonna move my body more this week. What does that mean? Does it mean I'm gonna go on a 5-minute walk today? Does it mean I'm gonna go on a 2-hour hike this weekend? Being vague is a way we protect ourselves from disappointment. But
Mhm.
the job here, your job is not to protect yourself from disappointment, right? If you're a parent and your child's learning to walk, you know that you have to let them fall. You know that you have to let them fall and hit the ground, and you're not going to react. You're just going to let them pick up and keep going and say, you got it. Good job. Try again. You have to cultivate that for yourself.
Mhm.
It is okay if you make a mistake. It is okay if you try something and it doesn't work. That is a valuable part of the experience. And so I was using being vague as a way to protect myself. Because if I was vague and it didn't work out, then I really didn't lose anything.
You didn't
But if I was,
disappoint
I didn't
yourself.
disappoint myself,
Yeah.
right? But if I was specific and it didn't work out, now I'm a failure.
Mhm.
And so I've actually adopted goal setting experts would be like, oh my God, this girl's crazy. I've actually adopted like a reverse mindset with goals at this point where I'm like, I'm going to start with setting the bar really low, right? Let's use the movement example. I'm
Yes.
going to move my body for 5 minutes every day. And I'm going to give myself 100 gold stars because I'm reinforcing a positive loop, right?
Mhm.
I did it. I did it. I did it. I'm proving to myself I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the thing. I'm building more evidence of what I want. So
Yeah.
if right now you're setting like crazy, huge goals that feel really scary, how could we narrow it down to like one tiny goal at a time? Whether it's around food, movement, your business, your career, your relationship, parenting. How could you take something that feels super big and overwhelming that your brain views as a threat? And how could you break it down into something smaller to give yourself wins? And know that it's still okay if you don't win. It's still okay if you make the mistake and you're going to learn from that. The goal is not to avoid failure. The goal is
Mhm.
not to avoid disappointing yourself. It's to recognize, hey, if those feelings come up, what am I learning from them? So
Yeah.
I've adopted almost like a reverse psychology goal setting framework for myself
Oh,
of
I love that. Whenever I see one of my clients who's getting stuck in procrastination, not getting started, I'm always asked like, "What's your goal here?" And then they'll tell me and it's like, "Oh, so you're trying to go from 0 to 100 here." And you're wondering why it's not working. Strange. And it can feel so uncomfortable to lower the bar. And actually, that's one of the biggest things I do with my clients. I help them lower the bar because I'll end this with this because I think it's really important to understand. And I don't think that people fully like embody this. The better you feel about yourself, the better your life will be.
Mhm.
The better you feel about yourself, the more you're going to feel encouraged to keep going, to go after goals, to take risks, to believe in yourself, to invest in yourself, to see yourself as worthy and deserving. And so we think that like this shame, like if I shame myself, if I feel bad about myself, if I set these big goals, and if I come from a place of pressure, then maybe I'll be more likely and motivated to change. And there is so much research that shows how bad of a motivator shame is. And it just makes you feel like a failure. And if you feel like a failure, why the heck would you even start
Why would you, right?
anything?
Why would you keep going? Why would you
Yeah.
keep doing it?
Yeah.
And I like to imagine, like, if you were talking to a little kid who was making artwork, okay, like we all made artwork as kids, and you're telling your kid, God, this artwork sucks. This artwork is really bad. It's probably finger painting, like, weird shapes, colors, like things are disproportional, whatever. And then they're saying, oh, well, then I'll just stop doing it. If it's not good, if I'm not getting positive reinforcement, then I'm just going to move away, right? So like I always told myself, oh my God, I'm a terrible dancer. Well, a lot of that came from stories in my childhood where like I was never put in dance and my parents like, Rachel, you cannot hold a beat or a rhythm. And I'm like, okay, then I guess I won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how can you be a loving parent to yourself? How can you be a loving part of your support system? Talk to yourself the way you would talk to a child sometimes in that loving, nurturing tone. How could you treat your body, your mind like it belongs to someone you love, right? Like you're talking to your best friend. You're encouraging her. Sometimes a little bit of dissociation can help us if we're saying, what would I tell my best friend? What would I tell my child or my sister if they were struggling? It's a really powerful tool because we can be really mean to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just love the way that you said that, of like the way that you think about yourself, the way that you think about, your relationship to your body, your work, your business. That's really what determines what's possible for you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I love leaving you beautiful listeners. I mean, you have been here this entire hour and 15 minutes. So you are a trooper. And I really hope that you've been taking some notes and that you've been asking yourself throughout this entire conversation, how can I apply what they're talking about to my life, right? This goes again from taking knowledge and then embodying it, because you can understand this, you can know it makes sense, but until you take it and you apply it to your life and you feel some of that discomfort as you start thinking differently about yourself, that's when the real change is going to happen. So I want to leave you some little action steps. So the first thing that I'm going to encourage you to do, and Luke and I do this every day against his will, is, and if you want to get your partner on board, I've had a lot of my clients do that with their husbands or even their kids, like, do it with your kids, start them young, is to, at the end of the day, celebrate 3 wins that you've had that day. Like, just ask your kids, hey, what are 3 things that you're proud of today? And what you might notice is that theirs are going to be these like small, silly things. And you might be able to see like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be, I started a business today. It doesn't have to be, I did a 30-minute walk today. It could be these small things. Like for me, I didn't press snooze. I even turned to Luke last night and I was like, Luke, I haven't pressed snooze in like 2 weeks. And these small things, that the more you bring attention to your wins, the more you're going to realize, oh, I'm doing pretty good. And that's going to bring that positive reinforcement like you were talking about, Rach. And the better you feel, the better it gets.
Yeah.
Do you have any action steps that they could take?
I love that. Yeah. So I was going to recommend 2 books. Sabrina and I read a lot. We recommend a lot of books to each other. I'm a big audiobook person.
I'm the opposite.
I read
hate them.
Physical books are fiction. I read physical books for fun, and I listen to audiobooks for learning. So 2 books I've read this year, I think Sabrina's read both of these as well, is
Can I guess? I knew you were going to say Gap and the Gain.
Damn it, I should have had you guess before I started speaking.
I knew it. Gap and the Gain for sure.
The Gap and the Gain. It's an incredible read for, I think, especially for women, because we tend to be high achievers, high performers, and we tend to be in the gap, right? We tend to be focusing on the negative. It is a great psychological reframe. And the second one is The Surrender Experiment.
I knew it!
Yeah, you could have guessed both of these. And I think they're very topical because the Surrender Experiment tells us, part of the premise of the book is, what if your desire to control is getting in the way of the universe working for your highest good, right? What if that was the belief of, wow, the more I control this, the more I'm getting in the way of the universe supporting me, guiding me, getting me on the right path. So I love both of those books. They've been profound for me this year. I want to do like a 2024 like book roundup recap. And maybe I'll do that. Like I've read like 27 books this year, and I really need to like top 5 fiction, top 5 nonfiction, self-development. But those are 2 that I've really loved. And if you feel called to check out either one of them, feel free.
Yeah, those have definitely been two of my favorites this year. I am finishing up Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. That one is, it's amazing. It's a little bit more, it requires you to use your brain. Definitely. It's a read where my highlighter it's going crazy, but it's an amazing read. And if you're not much of a reader, then he has a series on Gaia called Rewire, which is really great if you're more of like a visual learner and you like learning through TV shows or documentaries. So there are so many resources for you out there, and I hope that you got so much value from this conversation. Rachel, this was so fun. Honestly, I had to hold myself back because I could have gone for so much longer. But where can people connect with you if you're someone who is struggling with your hormone health, PCOS, birth control, fertility, and you want support from a absolute all-star who cares so much about her clients, guys? Like, I mean, I've seen it, and she is so good at her job and she loves her work. So where can they find you?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I feel grateful every day that I get to do the work that I do. It's the most meaningful thing I do in my life, probably that I will ever do in my life, at least as of right now, right, with the perspective I have. So if you want to connect with me, I am at Real Health with Rach on all social media platforms. My website is realhealthwithrach.com. And you can come over, hang out on social media, send me a DM, let me know where you found me, where we connected from through this podcast episode. And if you loved this episode, let Sabrina and I know. Like, did you enjoy this? Do you want to hear more on this topic? We could come back and do a part 2 at some point.
Yes.
But we'd love to hear from you if this is resonating, and, share your stories too. I think there's really, really powerful if something's coming up for you and you need to be seen or heard, like send Sabrina a DM or send me a DM. Like, you have so much support and love and community around you. And if you're feeling alone right now, reach out, like take that leap, get uncomfy if that feels uncomfy for you. And know there's so much love and support here for you.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because you can feel alone and you can feel like no one understands you, and there's people there. Like, I answer my DMs, I talk with you, I listen to you. Same for you. I'm sure that you're such a support system for anyone who wants to connect with you. So there are people there, even if it's not your friends or your partner or someone like directly in your life. There's people who care, and we are here for you. So yes, follow Rachel, tell her that you heard her on this podcast. Thanks for being here, my friend. This was so fun. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.